Hello and welcome to A Genteel Black Hole, the home of my bookish rambles. My name's Ali, and my New Year's resolution is to make my monthly wrap-up videos more promptly. What do you mean it's March? January was a pretty rough month for me, reading-wise and otherwise-wise. I still read plenty. I finished 4 books in the end, but in terms of enjoyment, my hit rate was considerably lower than usual. In the end, I can only really say that I liked one of those 4 books. The rest varied from just okay to pretty bad. On top of that, I had a severe slump in both physical and mental energy. It was the middle of February when the clouds finally started to part. It's taken me until now, the beginning of March, to finish scripting my January wrap-up video. My brain just hasn't been cooperating. I'm wondering whether one contributing factor was my experimentation with a new reading style. Rather than sticking to one book for the duration of my daily morning read, I tried reading 2 contrasting books in tandem. I would start the day with a longer, more challenging book, and then switch to a lighter one about halfway through. Brown toast for main course, white for pudding. This method got me through a few books that I might otherwise have struggled to finish. But with the benefit of hindsight, I question whether it was really worth it. And I wonder if flip-flopping between books like that caused my brain to overload. Whenever I tried to write my reviews, I found myself just feeling overwhelmed. My brain would kind of shrivel up in my skull, and I just couldn't write. They say a change is as good as a rest, but sometimes you really do need to actually rest. But finally, I find myself in better shape. I've regained a lot of that lost energy, and I seem more able to bounce back from a tiring day, which means I can finally do my January wrap-up, and the February one is on its way too. My big challenging book for January was Far From the Madding Crowd. Using my tandem reading method, I was working through it for one day shy of 4 whole weeks, and honestly, I'm now questioning whether I should have bothered. Far From the Madding Crowd is an 1874 novel by Thomas Hardy, originally published as a monthly serial in Cornhill magazine. The version I read from Penguin Classics actually restores Hardy's original manuscript before the original editor censored it and before Hardy himself made revisions for future reprints. This edition includes copious footnotes and appendices. Some of the notes explaining Hardy's allusions to biblical and ancient Greek mythology were very helpful to me. Other notes, thoughtlessly spoiling major plot points, less so. Thanks, Penguin. The book follows the fortunes, or often misfortunes, of Bathsheba Everdeen, a beautiful young woman who inherits a farm from her uncle and takes to running it herself, a somewhat controversial move in Victorian England. There are 3 contrasting rivals for her affections: Gabriel Oak, a devoted shepherd who works on her farm; Mr. Boldwood, a stern and serious older man who owns the neighbouring farm; and a seductive young soldier called Frank Troy. But which one will she end up with? And do I give a toss? Despite only being about 350 pages long, Far From the Madding Crowd was a bit of a slog. Thomas Hardy's writing is extremely dense and rich. It forced me to read it very slowly, just to make sense of the ornate prose. And I kept having to refer to the footnotes because of the aforementioned classical and biblical allusions. At first, this rich, heightened style lulled me into thinking that the book was good. But it isn't. At least, not for me. There seems to be a fundamental disconnect between Hardy's ornate sentences and the story that's being told. The plot gradually descends into flat-out melodrama. It basically feels to me like a soap opera. Some of Hardy's twists and turns are just ridiculous. I mean, one character literally runs away to join the circus, come on. And the self-serious, highbrow style of the prose made it even harder to get on board with those stupid twists. As a result, I spent almost a month reading a book that, in the end, I just didn't like very much. And that experience was made all the worse by the other book I read alongside it. Last year, I reread one of my favourite novels, A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. That got me wondering what else Carr had written, and his next most popular book seems to be a comedy about football. I have zero interest in football. In fact, my interest kind of goes into negative numbers. Sport in general is just a complete turn-off for me. But I figured if Ted Lasso or Terry Pratchett could get me invested in footballing stories, maybe so could J.L. Carr. Unfortunately, he couldn't. How Steeple Cinderby Wanderers Won the FA Cup is a 1975 comedic novel about, how Steeple Cinderby Wanderers won the FA Cup. It's a sort of Ronseal title, does what it says on the tin. The book is presented as a work of journalism, the official history of the club's absurd and unlikely rise from village underdogs to national champions. It's narrated by the club's secretary, Mr. Gidner, and includes transcripts of match commentaries, newspaper clippings, and other such ephemera. The setting is Steeple Cinderby, a tiny, sleepy English village. As the story begins, their main footballing rivals include such neighbouring villages as Barchester, Middlemarsh, and Bag Enderby. I see what you did there, Mr. Carr. Their only notable player is Alex Slingsby, an ex-pro who quit the Premier League to care for his disabled wife. He teaches at the local school, whose headmaster, the eccentric Hungarian émigré Dr. Kossuth, is noted for his unorthodox teaching methods. When Alex asks Dr. Kossuth to apply these methods to football, he provides the team with a number of postulations that magically turn them from no-hopers to an unbeatable footballing machine. Like A Month in the Country, this book tells of a brief and unrepeatable moment in time. To quote Joni Mitchell, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. But while the moment described in A Month in the Country was beautiful and bittersweet, the unlikely rise of Steeple Cinderby Wanderers seems more chaotic and stressful. Victory may be sweet, but I'm not truly convinced that anyone here was actually having a good time. I know I wasn't. In fact, I'm not really sure who the target audience is for this book. I mean, I'm sure there are people who love both football and the works of George Eliot and Anthony Trollope, but I'm willing to bet there's not a huge overlap in that Venn diagram. Despite being written in the mid-70s, it has the vibe of a 1950s Ealing comedy, but one that I'd probably catch on telly on a rainy Sunday afternoon and then turn off after half an hour. I came perilously close to DNFing this book. It was only reading it in tandem with Madding Crowd that got me through, and at the risk of repeating myself, I kinda wish I hadn't bothered. So, 2 disappointments in a row. Well, if anyone can save the day, surely it's Terry Pratchett. Right? Right? Jingo is a 1997 comedic fantasy by Terry Pratchett. It's the 21st Discworld book overall, and the 4th in the City Watch sub-series. I had read it once before, and my abiding memory was one of discomfort and disappointment, so I was kind of nervous to reread it. As the story begins, the mythical city of Leshp rises mysteriously from the sea. It's exactly midway between 2 old enemies, the city-state of Ankh-Morpork and the nation of Klatch, Discworld's analogue for ancient Arabia. The only witnesses to the sudden resurfacing of Leshp are 2 fishing crews, one from each of these rival states. Naturally, they both try and claim Leshp for their respective countries. Back in Ankh-Morpork, anti-Klatchian sentiment is rising. War is on the horizon. Clatch's young prince Kafura comes to Ankh on a diplomatic mission, accompanied by the sinister, scar-faced man known as 71-Hour Ahmed. So, when Prince Kafura is injured in an assassination attempt, it's up to Commander Sam Vimes of the City Watch to investigate. But, with tensions rising, and the aristocratic Lord Rust attempting to seize power and put Ankh-Morpork under martial law, Vimes has his work cut out for him. For the first half of this book, I was having a great time. It's a delight to revisit all my favourite characters from the City Watch. The conspiracy storyline is genuinely gripping, and while Pratchett's kind of lazy Middle Eastern stereotypes still make me a bit uncomfortable, I was more willing to trust that he was using them in service of a greater good. That is, to satirise the white character's racism. Whenever Sergeant Colon makes an ill-considered dig at the Clatchians, Corporal Nobbs is on hand to undercut his gammony nonsense. But once the action moves to Clatch, I remembered why I really don't like this book. A lot of the scenes in Clatch feel to me like aimless parodies of various classic films, most notably Lawrence of Arabia, and Pratchett's satire gets a little less pointed and a little less convincing. The conspiracy plot does get wrapped up in a clever and satisfying way, but at that point, my enthusiasm had waned dramatically. I do heartily approve of Pratchett's central message, though. The rich and powerful, both in Ankh-Morpork and Clatch, justify war with the twin flags of xenophobia and national security. But, in truth, it's a grab for power. Because if you're busy hating what's-his-name that runs the local takeaway because of the colour of his skin, you're not focusing on the real enemies, the ones that live in mansions and palaces. So, Jingo is a curious egg of a book. Bits of it are very good, but that's not enough to make me love the whole thing. It remains my least favourite book in the City Watch sub-series, and one I'd only really recommend to established Pratchett devotees. 3 duds in a row. Well, you know what they say, don't you? 4th time lucky? My last read of January, and easily the best, was Uncle Vanya by Anton Chekhov. This is a play from 1899, originally written and performed in Russian. I read Peter Carson's English translation, which is in the same Penguin Classics collection as The Seagull, which I read in December. Alexander Serebriakov is a retired art professor in declining health. He lives on his country estate with his second wife, Yelena, and Sonia, his daughter from his first marriage. Sonia works on the estate alongside her middle-aged uncle, Ivan Voynitsky, Vanya, the brother of Sonia's late mother. The family also receives frequent visits from Dr. Astrov, ostensibly to treat the professor's gout. Astrov is a dedicated environmentalist and often shares his strident views on deforestation and the havoc it wreaks. Sonia is drawn to Astrov, but he's completely oblivious. He only has eyes for Yelena, but Yelena has another admirer, Uncle Vanya. Vanya was once a devotee of Professor Serebriakov, but lately he's become disillusioned. He believes the professor has wasted his life in studying art without actually understanding art. Therefore, Vanya feels that he in turn has wasted his life working on the professor's estate, being devoted to a so-called genius who really amounts to nothing. So, when the professor announces his intention to sell the estate and move with Yelena to a dacha in Finland, effectively robbing Sonia of her inheritance, Vanya's disillusionment turns to outrage. Cue Chekhov's gun. In one sense, this is a play all about inheritance, the question of whether we are, to quote Jonas Salk, being good ancestors. The professor plans to sell the estate to fund his own lifestyle, leaving nothing for his daughter. Meanwhile, Dr. Astrov talks of his desire to leave the planet in a better state for people hundreds of years in the future. He rails against deforestation, warning of environmental disaster. It's particularly disconcerting to read this play from 1899, describing exactly the kinds of effects we are currently experiencing. Turns out we've had 100 years or more of bad ancestors, and sadly, very little sign of improvement. Another major theme is disillusionment, loss of faith. Vanya has poured his energies into running the professor's estate, only to find himself doubting the professor's true worth. This robs Vanya's life of meaning and purpose, and he reacts with rage. To read through a symbolic lens, the professor could represent God, and Vanya's disillusionment a loss of religious faith. In the final scene, Sonia insists that one day, when their work is done, she and Vanya will rest. To me, it sounds like the desperate cry of someone protesting too much. She no more believes it than Vanya does. As an introduction to both Chekhov and Russian literature in general, The Seagull was something of a trial by fire for me. So, by comparison, Uncle Vanya is much more approachable. It's a more confident and focused piece of writing. There are fewer characters and subplots and entanglements to keep track of, and less overt symbolism to reckon with. But for that reason, it also feels like a slightly less ambitious play. The Seagull's sense of striving made it feel more compelling and intriguing to me, while Uncle Vanya is a tidier and more mature piece of work. It hasn't consumed my thoughts in the same way. But these are only first impressions. Already, I feel like these are plays that I will want to revisit and reassess throughout my life. Whether that's by rereading these specific translations, or maybe trying others, or seeking out performances to watch, I'm not sure yet. But I am sure that I haven't heard the last of Uncle Vanya. Chekhov is a writer who continues to intrigue me, and I look forward to reading more from him. I've even added his short story collection to my wish list, but before that, the next play in this collection is Three Sisters, which I finished reading actually this morning as I record this, but I haven't gathered my thoughts on it yet, so no verdict as yet, but just, a peek behind the curtain. According to my TARDIS notebook, in January I watched 20 episodes of Cheers, which took me to nearly the end of season 4, 7 episodes of Only Connect, which included some of the seasonal specials, 4 episodes of The Great Pottery Throwdown, and 2 of Make Some Noise. I also watched one film, The Small Back Room from 1949. This is, like one of my December films, a lesser-known Powell and Pressburger. It stars David Farrar as a scientist named Sammy Rice, one of the backroom boys of World War II. His work involves both working on new technology for the war effort and learning how to defuse new types of enemy bombs. Having lost a foot in the war, Sammy struggles with feelings of inferiority and chronic pain. Prescription painkillers do very little for him, and he is tormented by the lure of alcohol. Only his girlfriend, Susan, played by Kathleen Byron, can keep him sober, but when their fraught relationship breaks down completely, Sammy is left to face his demons alone, just when an unexploded German bomb is found on the beach and the backroom boys need him most. It's definitely more low-key than Powell and Pressburger's more famous films, The Red Shoes, Black Narcissus, A Matter of Life and Death, etc. Apart from a Lost Weekend-style foray into German expressionism as Sammy cowers from a giant bottle of whiskey, things tend much more towards muted realism. Farrar and Byron are both great as the central couple, and as a disabled viewer myself, I personally thought that Sammy's disability was portrayed reasonably well for the time. I mean, I do have a bugbear about non-disabled actors playing disabled roles, but given that this was made in 1949, I'm not going to harp on about that here. The story didn't strike me as like insipidly inspirational, which always pisses me off. It's about Sammy having to overcome his feelings of inferiority, but it never feels patronizing to me. Sammy's biggest enemy is his self-pity, but overcoming that doesn't cancel out his very tangible physical disability. So, yeah, not a bad little film. Back to The Notebook, and I also listened to 33 albums in total, although you might want to count them differently depending on a couple of things. My most listened to artists were Bela Bartok with 6 albums, but that included 8 like compositions, so it depends how you want to count that. Also 6 albums by Led Zeppelin, although one of those was a double album, so you might want to call that 7, not sure. Anyway, 5 for Cardiacs, 4 for Cheer Accident, and 2 for Genesis, and then 1 each for The Beatles, Chat Pile, Craig Fortnum, Field Music, Henry Cow and Slap Happy, The Lodge, Shudder to Think, and Wayne Shorter. Of those albums, I would particularly recommend Duke by Genesis from 1980. I've always been more of a fan of the Peter Gabriel era of Genesis, when they were a bit more prog and a bit less pop, but my friend Mike convinced me to try the slightly later Genesis stuff as well, and it's not as pronounced of a change between eras. They do kind of ease into the pop, so there is a nice kind of middle ground where they're kind of getting a little bit more kind of accessible and melodic and anthemic, I suppose, while still retaining their prog roots. And Duke is right in the middle of that, and yeah, it turns out it really works for me. It's actually, yeah, really good. I particularly like the song Turn It On Again, which is kind of about needing a constant stream of media stimulation to get through the day. This was 1980, so it was like TV and radio at that point. But it feels very familiar to modern life as well. It would be about scrolling Instagram and YouTube and all of that these days, but pretty much the same thing. So that's everything I read, watched, and listened to in January. In terms of reading, the month was a bit of a washout, but at least I liked Uncle Vanya. Anyway, how about you? What have you been reading lately? What's your favourite film from the 40s? And do you think I'm a traitor for recommending a Phil Collins-era Genesis album? Why not let me know in the comments? I'm always happy to hear from you. But that's about it from me today. I hope you're having a lovely day, and I will see you when I see you.